She was worth $14 million. That's a quarter billion in today's money. But she couldn't drink from this water fountain. He owned more property than anyone in his city, both black or white. They burned it all to the ground. Your history teacher never told you about the black millionaires who existed before the civil rights movement. Not one or two, but dozens. And what happened to them will make your blood boil. Stay with me. This changes everything you thought you knew about American history. Before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, before the March on Washington, before Brown versus Board of Education, there were African American millionaires who built extraordinary wealth against impossible odds. This is a story deliberately left out of our history books. A story of resilience, brilliance, and entrepreneurial genius in the face of Jim Crow laws, racial violence, and systemic oppression. Today, we're going to meet the men and women who became millionaires when most black Americans were denied the right to vote, eat at the same lunch counters, or even drink from the same water fountains. Their stories will inspire you, shock you, and change the way you think about American history. But first, let me introduce you to the woman who started it all. Number 1. Madam C.J. Walker, America's first self-made female millionaire. Let's begin with perhaps the most famous name on our list. Madam C.J. Walker, born Sarah Breedlove in 1867 in Delta, Louisiana. Sarah was born to parents who had been enslaved. Orphaned at 7, married at 14, and widowed at 20 with a young daughter to support, she worked as a washerwoman making less than $2 a day. But Sarah had a problem that would change her life. She was losing her hair due to a scalp condition, made worse by the harsh hair products and lack of indoor plumbing at the time. In 1905, she developed her own hair care products specifically for black women. She later said she received the formula in a dream. Whether divine inspiration or brilliant chemistry, it worked. She married Charles Joseph Walker, took the name Madam C.J. Walker for her business, and began selling door to door. But here's what made her genius. She didn't just sell products, she sold a business opportunity. Madam Walker created one of the first multi-level marketing systems, training thousands of black women as Walker agents to sell her products. By 1917, she had trained over 20,000 sales agents. She built a factory in Indianapolis, employed thousands, and created economic opportunities for black women across America and the Caribbean. When she died in 1919, her estate was worth between $600,000 and $1 million. That's roughly $15 to $25 million today. Her mansion in Irvington, New York, called Villa LaRoe, was designed by a black architect and rivaled the estates of America's wealthiest families. But Madam Walker wasn't just about accumulating wealth. She was one of the largest philanthropists of her time, supporting black educational institutions, the NAACP, and anti-lynching campaigns. She once said, "I am not merely satisfied in making money for myself, for I am endeavoring to provide employment for hundreds of women of my race." Number 2. Robert Reed Church Sr., the South's first black millionaire. While Madam Walker was building her empire in the North, Robert Reed Church Sr. was already a millionaire in Memphis, Tennessee, the heart of the segregated South. Church was born enslaved in 1839, the son of a white steamboat captain and an enslaved woman. After emancipation, he worked as a steward on riverboats, saving every penny. In 1878, yellow fever devastated Memphis. The city's population dropped from 47,000 to 19,000 as people fled. Church stayed and bought real estate at rock-bottom prices. As Memphis recovered, Church's investments soared in value. He invested in saloons, real estate along Beale Street, and became the city's largest landowner and taxpayer, both black or white. When black citizens had no public recreational space due to segregation, Church built Church Park and Auditorium in 1899, a beautiful 6-acre park with an auditorium seating 2,000 people. It became the social and cultural center for black Memphis and hosted speakers like Booker T. Washington and President Theodore Roosevelt. By the time of his death in 1912, Robert Church was worth over $1 million, making him the South's first black millionaire. His daughter, Mary Church Terrell, became a famous civil rights activist and one of the first black women to earn a college degree. Number 3. Annie Turnbull Malone, the Forgotten Millionaire. Here's a name you probably haven't heard. Annie Turnbull Malone. And yet, She was likely wealthier than Madam C.J. Walker and actually mentored her. Born in 1869 in Illinois, Annie began experimenting with hair care products for black women in the 1890s, before Madam Walker. She moved to St. Louis in 1902 and founded the Poro Company. In 1918, Malone built Poro College, a sprawling complex covering an entire city block in St. Louis. It wasn't just a beauty school. It was a manufacturing plant, retail store, auditorium, dining hall, bakery, and dormitory. At its height, it employed 175 people. Like Walker, Malone trained thousands of women as Poro agents. At the company's peak, she had trained over 75,000 agents worldwide. In 1924, Malone's wealth was estimated at over $14 million. That's over $250 million in today's money. She was likely the wealthiest black woman in America, possibly the wealthiest woman, period. She donated the funds to keep Howard University Medical School open. She gave so generously to what's now Lincoln University in Missouri that they temporarily renamed it Malone College. Sadly, Malone's fortune was largely lost in a devastating divorce in the 1920s and legal battles over her business. She died in 1957 with little money, but her legacy of empowering black women lives on. Number 4. A.G. Gaston, Birmingham's black millionaire. Arthur George Gaston was born in 1892 in a log cabin in Alabama to parents who had been enslaved. He would become one of the most successful black businessmen in American history. Gaston had a simple philosophy: find a need and fill it. In segregated Birmingham, black people had many needs that white businesses wouldn't serve. He started with a burial insurance company in 1923. Black people couldn't get burial insurance from white companies. He charged 25 cents a week. Then he opened a funeral home, then a cemetery, then an insurance company, then a business college, then a radio station, then a construction company, and eventually Citizens Federal Savings and Loan Bank. In 1954, he built the A.G. Gaston Motel, Birmingham's first hotel for black travelers. It became the unofficial headquarters of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. stayed there, and it was from this motel that much of the Birmingham campaign was coordinated. By the 1960s, Gaston was worth over $40 million, roughly $400 million today. He was Birmingham's richest citizen, black or white. Gaston died in 1996 at age 103, having lived from the generation born into slavery to see a black man serve as mayor of Birmingham. Number 5. Willa and Charles Clinton, entertainment moguls. While most of these stories are about individual entrepreneurs, Willa and Charles Clinton represented success in entertainment and hospitality. In the 1920s and 30s, the Harlem Renaissance was in full swing. Black-owned businesses thrived in Harlem, from nightclubs to publishing houses. Among the wealthy were entertainment entrepreneurs who owned clubs, theaters, and hotels that catered to both black and white audiences during the Jazz Age. Though not a single household name dominates this category like in other industries, collectively, black entertainment entrepreneurs created significant wealth during this era, particularly in cities like New York, Chicago, and Kansas City. The irony? Many of the most famous jazz clubs of the era, like the Cotton Club, were white-owned and didn't even allow black patrons, only black performers. Yet black-owned venues thrived in Harlem and created millionaires in their own right. Now, let's talk about what makes these stories truly remarkable: the obstacles. Legal barriers. These entrepreneurs built wealth in an America where black people couldn't vote in most of the South. Interracial marriage was illegal. Schools, hospitals, and public facilities were segregated. Black people couldn't eat at most restaurants or stay at most hotels. Many businesses simply refused to serve black customers. Economic barriers. Banks regularly denied loans to black businesses. Many of these millionaires had to be entirely self-funded or rely on black-owned banks, which were themselves fighting for survival. Violence. Perhaps most horrifying, their success made them targets. Successful black businesses were attacked during race riots. The Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921 destroyed Black Wall Street, a thriving business district that had produced numerous black millionaires. 35 square blocks were burned, and an estimated 300 people were killed. The paradox. These millionaires existed in a paradox. They had wealth, but not freedom. They had money but couldn't use it in most places. They built mansions, but their children still attended inferior segregated schools. Annie Malone could have $14 million, but she still couldn't drink from a whites-only water fountain. Why we don't know these stories? These stories have been largely written out of mainstream American history. Why? Perhaps because they complicate the narrative. They show that even wealth couldn't protect Black Americans from racism. They show the extraordinary potential that was being suppressed by segregation. But also, they show that the narrative that Black Americans didn't try hard enough is a lie. They tried. They succeeded. And their success was systematically attacked and erased. These entrepreneurs succeeded not despite obstacles, but by understanding them. Madam Walker and Annie Malone saw that Black women were an underserved market. A.G. Gaston built businesses specifically to serve the needs segregation created. They understood that economic independence was a form of freedom when legal freedom was denied. They couldn't vote, but they could build, employ, and invest. Nearly all of these millionaires were philanthropists. They understood that individual success meant nothing without collective advancement. They funded schools, churches, civil rights organizations, and created employment. These millionaires proved that talent and business acumen existed in the Black community, something many white Americans at the time denied. They created jobs for thousands. They funded the civil rights organizations that would eventually dismantle segregation. Today, when we discuss the racial wealth gap, and median white family wealth is 10 times that of Black families, we must remember this history. Wealth compounds across generations. These entrepreneurs were building generational wealth, and much of it was destroyed through violence, discriminatory laws, and legal theft. The Tulsa Race Massacre alone destroyed $35 million in wealth, over $600 million today. And that's just one event. Imagine where we'd be if that wealth had been allowed to compound over a century. If Black Wall Street hadn't been burned. If discriminatory housing policies hadn't prevented Black families from buying in appreciating neighborhoods. If redlining hadn't denied mortgages. If contract buying hadn't stolen equity. These millionaires showed what was possible with just a sliver of opportunity. They make us wonder, how much human potential has been lost to racism? The next time someone suggests that wealth inequality is simply about hard work or talent, remember these names. Madam C.J. Walker, Annie Turnbull Malone, Robert Reed Church, A.G. Gaston, Mary Ellen Pleasant. They worked harder than most people ever will. They were more talented than most people ever are. And they built extraordinary wealth when America was actively trying to keep them poor. Their stories aren't just Black history. They're American history. They're human history. And they deserve to be remembered. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's make sure these stories are never forgotten again. What other historical figures do you think deserve more attention? Let me know in the comments below. For more videos on other notable millionaires that exist before the rights legal battles, like, share and comment, and also subscribe.